This is Michael Popak, Legal AF. You know how I know that Donald Trump is relying on the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 to fill his administration? Because the New York Times is reporting that Donald Trump and his transition team has refused to sign 2 or 3 major required agreements with the current government in order to allow for a peaceful transfer of power. They haven't signed the documents. They're already late on their deadlines. They haven't properly started any type of transition, which would include them being able to vet appropriately the thousands of people that they would need to use to fill an administration, to get access to $7 million worth of money in order to do that, to get office space, to have access to top secret and classified documents. They've refused to conduct themselves in a way that will allow for a peaceful transition. That tells me 2 things. 1, they're not in favor of a peaceful transition. They don't care about a peaceful transition. They want it to be as chaotic and rocky as possible. And 2, they want to hide their donors and try to raise as much grift as they possibly can before they have to sign those documents at the very last minute. Once they sign the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, with the General Services Administration, the GSA, they won't be able to raise more than $5,000 per donor. They don't want to do that. They want to raise tens of millions of dollars from undisclosed donors until they have to sign at the very last minute this document. It is undermining our national security by Donald Trump playing again fast and loose with ethics rules and refusing to sign transitional documents in case somehow he wins the election. He's making our country more vulnerable, more prone to being exploited by our foreign enemies because he wants to continue to raise money from people that he doesn't want to disclose who they are. Now, Donald Trump has a history of doing this. As you may recall, when he lost the first time, but would not acknowledge that he had lost, kept the fraud alive that he had somehow been denied the election, claimed outcome determinative fraud when there was none. He basically ordered the head of the General Services Administration, a little known agency in government, but very, very powerful. It's in charge of how you fill out the civil service positions, what kind of office space within Washington you're going to be allowed to have, and things like that. You signed the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, with the GSA. And the GSA head at the time, who I never heard of before, but I had to do hot takes about this, she refused to allow the incoming Biden administration to start the peaceful transition of power. She refused to give them access to office space. She refused to give them access to money that they needed for the transition. She refused to give them access to classified documents and information. She refused to enter into an MOU with the Biden administration. Eventually, the American people sort of demanded that, but it was a 3-week delay before that was 3 weeks of lost planning, lost peaceful transfer, lost appropriate transition. At a time when this country is constantly either at war or planning a war or involved with our allies in a war. Donald Trump's doing it all again. This time, he doesn't want to have his people sign the ethics code because he's unethical. He doesn't want his people to take the $7.2 million because he won't be able to take much more than that, 4 or 5 or 6 times more than that in multiples from his private donors. He doesn't want to release his donor list. He doesn't care about the American people or the peaceful transfer of power because he has no intention of agreeing to a peaceful transfer of power, even if he wins. If he loses, certainly not. We will be embroiled in another imbroglio, another delay, a foot drag that like we've never seen before. It'll make January 6th, 2020 look like kindergarten. So the takeaways from why wouldn't Donald Trump want to start a peaceful transfer of power, even if it meant him winning? In other words, why is he screwing up the transition to his own administration? And it's easy. Don't look for the hard answer. Look for the simple answer. 1, he's not planning on a peaceful transfer. 2, he doesn't need the General Service Administration. Everybody's excited in New York. He doesn't need the General Service Administration. He doesn't need access to their civil servant lists. He doesn't need to vet future bureaucrats and civil servants or other people in government through the GSA because he's outsourced it entirely to the Heritage Foundation, to Project 2025, and to their 18,000 person database. Forget what his campaign is saying. Forget what his presidential transition team is saying, headed by a Wall Street bigwig and Linda McMahon, right, from the World Wrestling Enterprise, WWE. The reason that Howard Lutnick and Linda McMahon have not signed these agreements, and they're late in doing so, in violation of every nonpartisan group out there talking about the need to do this in a complicated world and putting our country at risk, is because they want to continue to raise money and dark money behind the scenes. They don't want the donor list to get out. They are using Heritage Foundation and the database to vet people. They're bringing in 2025 acolytes. The shadow government and government in exile will be put into office, and they don't need the GSA to look over their shoulder and tell them what to do. And they don't want to sign ethics rules or commitments to a peaceful transfer. It's there. That's it. There's no with Donald Trump. Let me just tell you something. So as a kid, I loved eating cereal, but as an adult, I don't want all that sugar, and most cereals don't give me the protein I need. Then I found Magic Spoon, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like my childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. And if you're already a Magic Spoon fan, I got big news. Magic Spoon has turned their super popular cereal into high-protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are so delicious, they've already become my favorite before and after gym snack. Every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, so you can feel good about what you're eating. The most popular flavors are fruity and cocoa, and there's so many more. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 11 grams of protein on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. My favorite is Magic Spoon's chocolatey peanut butter treats. And by the way, they're my wife's favorite too. They're our favorite late night snack. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/legalaf or look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/legalaf for $5 off. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. With Donald Trump, it's never an elaborate, complicated scheme that you can't figure out. He's not that bright. You know, when he did his fraud 10 years straight related to the Trump Organization, the operation of his business. You know what his fraud was? It was an eraser on a pencil. It was making up numbers on a sheet of paper that represented his net worth, his personal financial statement. Bernie Madoff at least went through the exercise in running his Ponzi scheme, keeping the regulators at bay for so many years and doing a lot more elaborate things than Donald Trump. So when Donald Trump commits a fraud, or he is committing a heist in plain sight, never look for complicated. It's always tremendously simple. There's no other answer. And I defy, we can leave in comments right here. Tell me, I'm happy to hear any alternative rationale, right? Anybody from the presidential transition team? Anybody? Anybody in that camp? The two heads, Don Jr., Vance. You want to send your people here? Leave me a comment. Tell me another good reason that's not the nefarious one that I've just outlined, why Donald Trump is refusing to sign the 3 required agreements on ethics, security clearance, and a memorandum of understanding to get the money from the GSA and start a transition, other than what I've outlined. I'm sorry that mine makes perfect sense, and it tracks completely and connects all the dots very, very efficiently, but that's the reality. And I credit the reporting of the New York Times and Ken Bensinger himself. I thought he did a very, very good job here at outlining it. I want to move it forward. Donald Trump has a lot of experience with this MOU because he refused to enter into it on the other half when the Biden administration was coming in. As I said before, instead he put pressure on and leaned on this administrator, she's no longer there, for the General Service Administration, who I'd never heard of before. But suddenly for that moment, for that 2 weeks, she was the most powerful person in the world. She was blocking and locking the door to the incoming Biden administration because she didn't want to piss off Donald Trump because she was scared of him. It's obvious. So they have no respect. That's one of my biggest pet peeves and criticisms of Donald Trump and all the people around him. They were carrying his water and are enabling him. He has no respect for the institution of the presidency, no respect for the Constitution, no respect for the three co-equal branches of government, the rule of law, no respect for norms and decorum. He thinks he's some sort of Wall Street broker or trader. He thinks he's some sort of World Wrestling Federation hero or heel. It's a perfect combination for his transition team. A Wall Street guy and Linda McMahon, it's perfect for the storytelling and the narrative that they're telling here. And that's all it is storytelling and fiction. This is a complete fraud and a complete fiction. And so they won't abide by any of the norms. That's why we don't have his medical records or any kind of proper medical vetting other than MAGA, super MAGA doctors like Ronnie Jackson, who used to be his personal doctor in the White House and now is, as a Texas congressperson. That's why we don't have his medical records. That's why we don't have his tax returns. He doesn't do anything that the public has demanded and required by ethics, by transparency, by full disclosure, because he doesn't want it disclosed. Because his closet's so filled with skeletons, you can't even close the closet. I'm going to continue to follow it all. Everything that explains Donald Trump's mental state or lack thereof, his lack of ethics, his lack of character. I always say that you can judge somebody, their character is what they do when nobody's looking, not what they do in public. And when nobody was looking, Donald Trump was refusing to do, and is currently, at the time of this hot take, refusing to do a peaceful transfer of power and wants to hide his donor list, his money. He wants to keep his people unethical, not required to comply with ethics, and put this country at risk as a result, because it's going to be a failed transition that's going to compromise American values and interests. If, God forbid, heaven help us, Donald Trump gets reelected. There's a way to fight that at the ballot box, November the 5th. Early voting has started. Register to vote. If you haven't already, follow perfectly and precisely all of the rules and regulations that your state has put up as a barrier to entry to voting. Don't let them disenfranchise you. Do everything you can to early vote or mail-in vote or absentee vote or show up on the day of election on November the 5th and vote. And work hard to ensure that your ballot is not piled up in a provisional ballot pile, but is actually counted. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, and it may be on the new Legal AF MTN channel for MeidasTouch Network. It's a collaboration of Legal AF and MeidasTouch Network. It's to gather up all this law and politics intersection stuff, the commentary and the analysis that you've come to respect and enjoy, and have it also in one place, parallel and in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network. Legal AF MTN, free subscribe, and help us over there fight for democracy. Until my next hot take, it's Michael Popak, and I'm reporting. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.